In today's deep dive, we'll explore the 6 days of God in the Qur'an, an Ismaili esoteric journey. We'll travel from Adam to Muhammad, through the world of faith, and into the 7th day, the day of Qiyāmah, when the throne is established upon the waters of knowledge and the hidden truths of all previous revelations are finally unveiled. Today, we're diving into a fascinating interpretation of time, creation, and spiritual history found within the Qur'an, moving beyond a literal understanding to uncover profound esoteric insights. You've given us truly rich material here, and we're ready to delve in. So let's start with this idea of the 6 days of creation. The Quran mentions it several times, right? Verses like 7.54, 14.5, 11.7. And, at first glance, it really does sound like a timeline, like a sequence of events for making the physical world, maybe similar to Genesis.
It does seem that way initially, but what's so interesting is how the Quran itself almost immediately complicates that literal reading. For instance, you have God creating instantaneously, just the command, "Kun be," and, well, it is. That's Quran 36.82. And then there are these verses where time seems completely different from our perspective. A day with God could be like 1,000 human years.
1,000 years, right. And I think there's another verse, isn't there, about the last day being even longer.
Exactly. 50,000 years, according to Quran 70.4. So you have instantaneous creation on one hand and these vastly different scales of divine time on the other.
So what's going on? If creation can be instant and God's days aren't fixed 24-hour periods, what can these 6 days possibly mean? It feels like a paradox.
It really does. And that tension, that apparent paradox, is precisely what signals we need to look deeper. It nudges us away from thinking about physical cosmology and points us instead towards spiritual history. It's an invitation to think about the days of God mentioned in 14.5, or these days of creation, in a symbolic, non-material way. It's actually quite similar to how symbolic days or periods are understood in many other sacred traditions, too. It's about a spiritual process unfolding.
Okay, so moving away from literal days, this is where the Ismaili esoteric tradition comes in, right? How does it interpret these 6 days? This sounds like where it gets really interesting.
It absolutely does. Thinkers within the tradition, like the great Pir Nasiri Khusraw, offer a really profound interpretation here. They understand these 6 days not as time periods for physical creation, but as 6 major historical cycles. Cycles where God created something else entirely, what's called the world of faith.
The world of faith created over 6 days.
Exactly. Pir Nasiri Khusraw, in his work Between Reason and Revelation, puts it very clearly. He says every prophet's era is actually referred to as his day. So each day represents the era of a major prophet, a Natiq, or enunciating prophet. This is someone who brings a new religious law, a new book, and essentially opens up a new chapter of divine guidance for humanity.
Wow, okay, so these aren't days, they're vast historical epochs that completely reframes it. Can you tell us who these 6 Natiqs are, these key prophets shaping the cycles?
Certainly. The tradition identifies 6 specific figures who mark these great cycles. First, there's Hazrat Adam. He's seen as inaugurating the very first religious world, the first cycle. Then second, Hazrat Nuh, or Noah. He brought renewal, especially after what's described poetically as a deluge of forgetfulness, a time when earlier guidance was lost.
Okay, Adam, no.
Third, Hazrat Abraham, a pivotal figure, the patriarch of the major monotheistic streams. Fourth is Hazrat Musa, or Moses, the great lawgiver to the people of Israel. Fifth, Hazrat Jesus, the bearer of the gospel, initiating the Christian era. And finally, the 6th Natiq is Hazrat Muhammad, who is understood as the seal of the prophets within this particular sequence of revealed laws, bringing the Qur'an and completing this set of 6 cycles.
That's a fascinating framework. It really maps out spiritual history. And it means, for example, communities like Christians fit into the 5th day, the era of Jesus, and Jewish communities into the 4th day, the era of Moses. Even Mazdaeans, you mentioned, from the Zoroastrian tradition, fit into the 3rd day.
Precisely. It gives each community its sort of correct place within this grand unfolding sequence of prophetic days. Each holds a piece of the larger story.
And how long are these cycles supposed to last? Are they fixed?
Not rigidly fixed, no. But the understanding is they generally last quite a while, perhaps anywhere from 500 to, say, 1,500 years. It needs to be long enough, you see, for the specific law and guidance brought by the Natiq to really take root in society, to mature, and then eventually for conditions to change enough that a renewal becomes necessary. It's a dynamic process.
So within each of these large cycles these days, is there a consistent structure, a kind of spiritual blueprint that repeats?
Yes, that's another key insight. Each day of God is understood to follow a specific divine pattern, an internal structure. You always have the Natiq, the prophet who brings the Zahir, the outward law, and the scripture. But alongside, or following him, there's always the Asas. This word means foundation. He is the first hereditary Imam in that cycle, the one entrusted with the baton, the esoteric interpretation, the deeper meanings.
The keeper of the inner truths.
Exactly. And then throughout that entire cycle, you have the line of Imams descended from the Asas. They continue the guidance, preserving both the outward law and the inner understanding for the duration of that era.
So the presence of the Imamat, the line of Imams, is the constant thread linking all these different cycles together, a kind of continuity across these vast stretches of time.
That's absolutely central. It provides this arc of divine permanence. And this structure also helps us understand what happens when one cycle ends. The end of a prophetic cycle, you see, is also considered a form of Qiyāmah.
Qiyāmah, like the resurrection.
Yes, but specifically here, it means the end of the period of concealment for that specific era's truths. It's a kind of unveiling before the next Natiq arrives to open the next day with a new dispensation.
This leads us perfectly to the Quranic verse. Then he established the throne right after mentioning the 6 days. This introduces the 7th day, doesn't it? The cycle of the great Qiyāmah. What makes this 7th day so different?
That's a really important question. The key difference lies in this concept of concealment versus unveiling. During the 6 prophetic days, the deeper spiritual truths, the baton, were often veiled. They were hidden within symbols, parables, rituals, the outward forms of the law. Access was often limited, perhaps mainly for initiates, for those actively seeking that deeper ilm or knowledge.
Okay, so the first 6 days involved a kind of hiding or protecting of the inner meaning?
You could say that. It was a necessary mode for those times. But the 7th day is different. Its defining characteristic is unveiling. The truths that were concealed are meant to be brought out into the open publicly. It's a fundamental shift.
So Qiyāmah, it isn't primarily about the world ending in fire and brimstone, like many might think. It's more about a spiritual resurrection, an unveiling of understanding.
Precisely. That's the core esoteric understanding. Nasir al-Din Tusi, another major Ismaili thinker, puts it beautifully in his Paradise of Submission. He says, essentially, the cycle of every prophet is called the cycle of concealment, and the cycle of every Qaim is called the cycle of unveiling.
The Qaim, who is that?
The Qaim is the figure associated with the 7th day, the one who brings about this great Qiyāmah, this great unveiling. So Qiyāmah literally means rising, a spiritual rising and awakening. And interestingly, the original meaning of apocalypse isn't destruction either. It's Greek for revelation or unveiling.
Wow. Okay, so the popular understanding is almost the opposite of the original meaning.
In many ways, yes. It's about spiritual awakening, a rebirth of understanding, not physical annihilation.
So if this 7th day, this Qiyāmah, is about unveiling truth, what does that mean for us, for humanity living in this era? What's the challenge or the test?
That's the crux of it. The 7th day isn't about bringing a new religious law. The sequence of laws from Adam to Muhammad is considered complete in that sense. Instead, the primary focus, the main test, shifts to something else, the recognition of the Imam of the time. This is known as Imam Shanasi.
Recognizing the Imam.
Yes. It becomes a period for weighing one's inner knowledge, one's ilm, and one's actions based on that knowledge. The full esoteric meanings of all the previous laws are unveiled, but the key challenge is recognizing the living guide, the Imam. Without that recognition, according to this understanding, even performing rituals or good deeds might lack their full salvific power. And it's noted, even by the Imams themselves, that achieving this deep recognition, Imam Shanasi, is profound. Even after years, decades of outward affiliation, true recognition might still be elusive for many.
That leads us to another powerful image from the Qur'an you mentioned earlier, verse 11.7, God's throne established upon the water. How does that fit into the 7th day context?
Oh, that's such a critical piece of symbolism here. In Ismaili esoteric interpretation, water, ma, is consistently used as a symbol for ilm, for knowledge, divine spiritual knowledge.
Okay, water equals knowledge, like a vast ocean of wisdom.
Exactly, an infinite ocean. And the throne, arsh, symbolizes divine sovereignty, spiritual authority, the locus of command. So the throne being upon the water carries this incredibly profound implication. Divine authority in this era of unveiling rests upon knowledge. It means only those who can stand upon the water, those who are immersed in this spiritual knowledge, yet elevated by it, can truly perceive the throne, can recognize the Imam in his true reality.
So without that knowledge, without diving into that water,
without that ilm, one could theoretically be right there, physically present with the Qaim, the Imam of the Qiyāmah, and still fail to recognize him, fail to see the throne because they aren't standing on the water of knowledge. It's quite a sobering thought.
So just to clarify the rules again, the Natiq changes with each of the 6 cycles, bringing a new outward law. But the Imama, the light of the Imam, is continuous throughout. How does the Qiyam, the figure of the 7th day, relate to the Natiqs then? Is there a hierarchy?
That's a very insightful question. Precisely because the Qiyam's function is to unveil the inner realities that the Natiqs had concealed within the laws they brought. The revealer of the secret is seen as holding a higher station than the one who veiled it, in a sense. The Natiqs laid the foundation with the outward law. The Qiyam reveals the fullness of its inner meaning. And this recognition, this path to the Qiyam and the unveiled truth, isn't seen as something you just stumble upon by yourself. It requires guidance through the proper channels, the divinely appointed hierarchy, the Natiq, the Asas, the Imam, the Hujat, the Pir. It's a guided path.
Okay, this concept of Qiyāmah seems quite layered. You mentioned it happening at the end of cycles, but also this great Qiyāmah at the 7th day. Are there other dimensions to it, maybe even a personal one?
Yes, absolutely. The tradition often speaks of Qiyāmah on 3 distinct levels, which helps understand its scope. First, there's what you could call the minor Qiyāmah, Qiyāmah Shukr. This is really personal. It's the individual's own spiritual resurrection, that moment of awakening to higher consciousness, recognizing the truth within oneself.
Like a personal enlightenment moment.
Kind of, yes. Then there's the major Qiyāmah, Qiyāmah Kubra. This is the collective event we've been discussing, the end of a major prophetic cycle, or the great unveiling associated with the 7th day. It affects a whole era. And finally, there's a concept of perpetual Qiyāmah. For the dedicated seeker, the salik, every single day, every moment, can be an opportunity for rising, for gaining deeper spiritual insight, for a continuous unveiling. It's an ongoing process.
That's incredibly rich. As we start to wrap up, could you perhaps summarize the main illuminating points we've covered, just to crystallize things for us?
Of course. Let's try and capture the essence. First, the 6 days aren't literal time, but 6 prophetic cycles, each forming a complete spiritual world. Second, this world of faith is built through the divine law brought by prophets, it's preserved by the Imams, and it finds its ultimate fulfillment in Qiyāmah. Third, the 7th day is distinct. It's about the establishment of the throne, symbolizing the public unveiling of spiritual truths.
Okay.
Fourth, Qiyāmah itself fundamentally means a spiritual rising or resurrection of understanding, not a physical end of the world. Fifth, the whole dynamic operates through alternating modes, concealment during the prophetic cycles and unveiling in the era of Qiyāmah. It's like God's pedagogy. Sixth, the powerful symbols of water and throne tell us that spiritual knowledge, ilm, is the essential prerequisite for perceiving divine sovereignty.
The water of knowledge. Got it.
Seventh, there's that crucial continuity of the Imams. The Imam's light is the eternal bridge connecting all these cycles. Eighth, the defining test of this 7th day, this era of unveiling, is Imam Shanasi, the recognition of the Imam. And finally, these cycles are always progressive. Each new cycle builds upon, refines, and advances understanding. There's no going backward.
As we close out today's exploration, consider this profound reflection. The 6 days of creation are not primitive cosmology, but a sophisticated map of sacred time.
And the implication is that we are said to be living now, in this 7th day, the day of the throne, when concealment has theoretically ended, and those waters of knowledge lie open. Yet, that throne, that divine authority, remains visible only to those who actually dare to step into those waters, who commit their intellect and heart to seeking ilm from the living Imam of the time.
So, Qiyāmah, this unveiling, is presented as both the greatest mercy, the truth is available, and perhaps the greatest trial. It really asks each of us, doesn't it? Will you recognize the one who unveils what the prophets veiled? Will you make the effort to drink from that water of knowledge beneath the throne, or will you remain on the shore, just content with maybe distant reflections?
Exactly. The apocalypse, understood in this way, isn't about the world dying, but about the potential rebirth of our own spiritual sight. And in this perpetual Saturday, this ongoing 7th day, every act of sincere recognition is like a small resurrection. Every step towards the Imam, guided by knowledge, is a rising into that eternal day that conceptually never ends.
As we close out today's episode, we've explored the 6 days of God in the Qur'an, not as moments on a clock, but as vast cycles of prophecy leading to the great unveiling of Qiyāmah. Each day, each prophet, each era builds toward the throne upon the waters of knowledge. Reflect on these truths, let them settle in your heart, and share this journey with your family and friends. Sometimes one awakened heart can light an entire generation. We'll be back soon with another powerful podcast. Until next time, rise with purpose and let the light guide you.